Okay, welcome back. Next video, we're going to be adding a little more functionality. So I'm going to be using the 3D top-down. This can be applied to your side scroller or your 2D. Same concept. I just thought that I'd use this one because I can quickly get an animation from mixer mode for the next state. So we can move around, we can jump. In the 2D one, there's no jumping. We could also remove jumping from this one the same way we did in the 2D one. That is up to you. Boom, boom. Okay, so all I want to do is add some form of dashing. Like so that I can just dash the character in the direction that we're moving. So how do we go about that? We're going to start with this in Bolt. Okay, there it is. Okay, so we're just going to move it off to the side just somewhere where we can just kind of, work with the dashing system. So we are going to need a variable that we're going to create a little timer, if you will, for the dashing. So as long as that time value still exists, as long as we're still in the dashing time, we'll be moving the character in a direction. The reason we do it this way, and the reason you'll see a lot of these kind of things online, is that you get consistent results. We could kind of set it up if you look at the way we've done the jump here. Where's my jump? Where we just hit the button, go through the branch, and add force. The problem with it being the way it is you could get inconsistent results like that. The reason what I mean about that is I guess you could hit a slope and it's going to struggle a little bit more. We want to always have consistent results when you're dodging or dashing. We do not want undesirable results. So instead of doing this once off add force thing, we're going to add force consistently over a small period of time so that that timer will always be constant. So the character will always travel for that amount of time. So for that to work, we are going to add in the graph section, so it's hidden to the editor. We're going to call this current dash time, so we can track where we are currently in the dash time. That's going to be a float. We're also going to add another one called is dashing, I guess, just a boolean just to make sure we are that we currently are dashing so that we can do the dash. So those two are going to be in the graph. The other two have to be accessible by the artist or the editor or the game designer, game tester, whatever it is. So it's going to be at the bottom here. This one's going to be dash time. So this is how long the character is going to dash for. I think by default I'm going to make it like 0.2. These values need to be small because they're in seconds. So you don't want the character to dash for a full second because he could end up on the other side of the room. The next one is the amount of dash, the amount of force. So we're going to call this dash force. And again, whoops, apologies for my puppy. I'm going to set this to something like 1,000 because we're going to be multiplying that by time.delta time. So we are going to, this value is going to need that to be a little bit bigger. Okay, do we have a start? No. So at the start of the game, so we're going to add a start method or start function. And at the start, we're going to take the current dash time and we're going to update the, sorry, we're getting the dash time and we're going to update to the current dash time. Because remember, the dash time here is set to 0 and we don't want the artist to be able to mess with this value. So all the artist is going to do is update, this is how long I want the dash to be, which in this case is 0.2. If we look over here, and we're telling the timer, the object that's actually going to calculate how long we dash for, that you are now 0.2 like 20% of a second long. So we're going to add this, and we're just going to add a comment here saying update current dash time to dash time at start. There we go. So that's all that does. We're just taking the dash time, we're updating the current dash time with that value. Okay, so the next step is to kind of like, how do we suss out what button we're going to press to dash? So we can go into the actions here, input manager, and set one up. But just for this exercise, I'm just going to hard code it. So I'm going to type in on keyboard input. And we're using space for jump already, so if you're not using it, you could probably use that for a dash. So I'm going to make my dash. Actually, I'm going to make my dash my right mouse button. So I'm going to go on mouse input. There we go. So when my right mouse button is down, I need to first do a branch or an if statement to check to see if we're currently dashing. So let's grab that is dashing variable. Because if we are dashing, we don't want to be spamming this button, so we're constantly just dashing like a mad person. So first and foremost, we need to see, are we already dashing? If we are, we're going to do nothing. If not, we're going to hold down Alt and drag is dashing in to set that variable. So if we're not dashing, we're going to add a bool literal. We're going to say you are now dashing. So if you weren't dashing before, when I press this button, we're going to set is dashing to be true. And we're going to add this into a group. Let's call this on mouse button down set dashing to true. Again, might be very descriptive and very over the top, but it's easier to kind of make sense of it if you just tell yourself what you're doing there. A couple of months down the line, you're gonna be very grateful that you did this. Okay, there we go. And then the next step is to actually do the dashing. Now remember, I'm using the rigid body physics to dash. So I'm going to want to, I could probably use a move to position, but I'm just going to use either a velocity or an add force. We can try both and see which one we prefer. So this needs to be in, I prefer to have this in the fixed update, like all other physics-based stuff. And we're going to be, let me duplicate this branch here along with this dashing. First, we need to find out, are we dashing? Because we don't want this to fire if we're not actually dashing. If we're not dashing, then what the hell? It defeats the purpose of actually spending all this time and the calculations firing off an event that's not being used at that point. So if dashing is true, we're going to drag into another branch. And this branch is going to kind of suss out whether or not where is it? The current dash time, correct, is less or equal to 0. So if it's less or equal to 0, that means we are no longer capable of dashing because we've run out of time. We run out of dash time, if you will. So we've run out of dash time here. Boom. So I'm doing the top section. Once we've run out of dash time here, we want to do the following. We want to go to the top here and grab these two variables and duplicate them, bring them down here. Oh, I'm going to run out of space. Let's just move this across. So what happens is if we run out of dash time, I need to reset my current dash time back to the dash time that we started at the beginning of the game. And then after we've done that, I just want to make sure over here that I basically stop the character from moving. Because we're using force or velocity, there is a moment where the character will take time to slow down. And as humans, we can stop ourselves quite quickly by just like almost kind of braking in the moment to stop any kind of momentum and change direction or whatever it is. So in this case, I want to freeze all my velocity. So I'm going to type in velocity and I'm going to do rigid body dot velocity set. I want to set my velocity of my character so that I can stop it. Now, based on whether or not, if you're doing the top down, there's no jump, there's nothing, you can actually just leave it as it is, 0, 0, 0. You're basically telling it to stop all movement in all directions. But because I am using the one with the jump, I'm going to want to basically freeze everything but the Y position because I want the character to still fall. But again, this isn't applicable necessarily to everyone. This will be applicable to people doing side scrollers with dashing or kind of like your dark siders where you can dash but you can also jump. But again, you can just leave this 0, 0, 0 across the board if you do not have any kind of jumping or falling mechanics. But for those of you who do, again, because I'm lazy, I'm going to come down here. Where am I? I'm going to come here and just grab my rigid body velocity dot y I'm going to duplicate that so I don't have to type all of that again. And I'm just going to plug that directly into the Y position. So now we're going to freeze the Z and the X position, which is our forward and side to side movement, but allow gravity to take over for the rest. Sorry. Then the last thing we need to do is grab this boolean is dashing, duplicate it, and we're going to tell it you've now officially stopped dashing. You're no longer dashing, so you can turn yourself off. I'm going to put a comment group around here. I'm going to call this one reset dash on completion. So that's all we're doing here. So once the dash is finished, we are going to reset all the values kind of back to its factory settings, if you will. Okay, so but what do we do if we do have a current dash timer? We can still dash. We are going to go down here. I'm going to just grab my current dash time variable, bring it down here because we're going to be setting that, and I'm going to grab a get of the same variable from my variables on the side here, and I'm going to go and say subtract. Plug in the subtraction over there. I'll tell you what we're subtracting in a minute. We'll plug that into there. What are we subtracting? We're just going to be subtracting time dot fixed delta time, or it can be delta time. Again, like I've seen a lot of talks where they say that the C# of the Unity is aware whether you're using a update or a fixed update, and it will change this, use this accordingly. So it makes no difference whether, as far as I've noticed. So all we're doing is we're saying take the current dash time, which is 0.2, and subtract time.delta time, which is something like 0.01 every frame. And what happens is, like we said here, once it reaches 0, we're finished dashing, so reset the entire system. But while we can still dash, we are going to set our velocity. I'm going to duplicate this node again, plug it in here, and once again, break this out, because we only need to know about, essentially, we really only need to know about one or two of these if we're doing a top-down. If you're doing a side scroller, you are only going to be inputting directly into the X, not even the Y or Z. I'll show you a screen grab of what the two differences are. Now, we've already got all these inputs set up because remember, we normalized all those values. So I'm going to go down here and grab everything here, duplicate that, because we're going to need all of these inputs for the dashing, the directional dash. This will even work for something like Celeste, where she can do a directional dash. Okay, so now I'm going to make some space here because we have to multiply both of these values by, yes, you've guessed it, by our dash force. So I'm going to grab our dash force, put it between these two. I'm going to type in multiply, so I can just grab the multiply and just duplicate that again and plug this multiply into there and plug the dash force into both the B's of those multipliers. So we're taking whatever this input is. Remember, this input can only be between -1 and 1 because we've normalized the value. And we're multiplying that by this value so we can get a bigger value. So right now it's set to 1,000. So if I'm moving right, this is going to be 1 multiplied by 1,000. It's going to give me 1,000. If I'm moving left, this is going to be -1 multiplied by 1,000. It's going to give me a -1,000. So, and then all we have left to do before we do anything here again is multiply this one more time by time.delta time, just so that we can get the result we're looking. So this is X, so I'm going to plug that into X. This is Y, which means I'm going to plug that into Z over there. And then we just need to have our time.delta time here, or I can just go time.fixed delta time. Actually, let's just replace both of these, makes no difference. Like I said, we'll see it now, but it really, I haven't seen a difference between the two, especially when it's smart enough to recognize which update you're in, whether it's a fixed or your standard update. Okay, so that's it. That adds all the force. At the end here, we could say set animator to be dashing true. So if my internet is kind enough, I'll show you how we're going to set that up. So this is our entire dashing system. I'm using velocity, but let me create one here so we can try add force. We'll plug this in afterwards. I'm going to make an impulse. We can try the differences and see what happens. Okay, so let's see how this works. When we start the game, notice at the bottom here, the variable is going to be set to 0.2. I forgot, what key did I set it to be? Right mouse button. Oh. Oh, I've chosen middle mouse button as my dash. Okay, so this might be a bit of a bug. Something I've noticed. If you are using Unity 2019.3.15 like I am, Bolt is kind of not working as advertised. It's causing a lot of grief for me anyway, personally. I haven't, when I do it in code, it's perfectly fine. So let's just see if, let me just change this button correctly. Not middle mouse button, right mouse button. And let me just up this value a little bit more, just so we can make it more obvious than what it is right now. I'll make this like 3000. Make this like 0.25. Just, you're going to tweak these two values to get the kind of dash quality look that you're trying to. So let's see if, sorry about my puppy, she's too cute. There we go. Whoa, okay, goodbye, it's been real. Maybe 3000 might have been a bit much. So it's not consistent. Let me try to hide this so we don't see it. It's not consistent that the bolt doesn't always work. Like right now, it's not working any longer, but I'm quite sure if I... There we go, now it works. So I'm going to... I don't even know how to fix this. So I guess you can take my word for it that it works. Let me put a comment group around here. Call this dashing in progress. And that should do the trick. So I'm going to add a comment group around all of this, which is really poorly constructed. Let's try that again. Just call this dashing system. And I'll show you that it works by doing the same thing in code and just showing you that it works. But again, if you are using Bolt, please do not update past 2019.3.14. 15 seems to break, and I haven't actually... I'm waiting for the next release of Bolt so that we can actually get this stuff working. It's not everything kind of breaks, but quite a fair amount of it breaks. Maybe it's these. Let me replace these two. So they're time dot delta. Maybe it's just the fixed delta. Fixed. There we go. Let's give that one more shot. Okay, so it might... No, makes no difference. And it's in, like I said, it's extremely inconsistent. There, do you see how it's like doing a little bit of dashing, but... So just, like I said, I'm going to show you now how it works. Apologies, just had to let my dog out. She was being a baby. Cry, cry. She's too cute. Okay, so that's it. So let's, again, like I said, this should be working for you. I've had this issue in the past. I really thought they would. I'm gonna have to see what version of Bolt I can get from, if there isn't a most recent update. But that is pretty much how you do your dashing system there. I'm going to show you the same thing in code, just kind of so that you can see that it works, at least. Okay, so we're going to open up the code and we're going to do the exact same thing. So just let the code open up properly and compile itself, all that nonsense. Okay, so we added, let's start with a private variable. It's going to be a bool, and this one's going to be is dashing. I assume that's the first one. The next one we're going to make is also private, and this one's going to be a float, and we're going to call this one current dash time, just so we can keep the names consistent. I'm going to put a default setting of 0.25 there. Remember to put an F if you got a decimal point so that it's aware that there is two values that have been combined to create a float. Okay, so now we have both the private variables. Now we need to just do the serialized field variables. The first one is going to be our dash force, which I'm going to set to, I'm going to keep it at 1,000. Let's just hope it works. Oh wait, I didn't even specify what the type of variable is. So it's a float, my apologies. And the next one is another serialized field. This one is also going to be a float, and this one is going to be dash time. Just so we can, oh wait, sorry, don't set the current dash time. What am I doing? This one does not need a time because we're going to be setting that at runtime. Okay, so now that we have these variables, again, like I said, it will work so you can see at least it working and be aware that it's not the flawed code, it's just the flawed system from Bolt at the moment. It will be better. Now that it's owned by Unity, hopefully it gets equally updated as quickly as the Unity is. Okay, we got, so in the update, we want to do what we did before. So we're going to go and say if input dot get mouse button down. What mouse button are we looking for? We are looking for 1 because that's the mouse. Because 0 is left, right is 1, and 2 is the middle mouse button. So if that's the case, and sorry, I did not do an and we are not dashing. So if it's not dashing, so we're doing it a little bit different to Bolt. Bolt, we're saying if you're not doing that, because I just don't really think I need to set up an else statement for this. So I'm just asking the question the opposite. So if input.getMouse button down is pressed and we're not dashing, we're going to say is dashing is equal to true. Okay, so that's it from this side. Now we're going to go into our fixed update. We're going to go to the bottom here and we're going to ask the question if is dashing. So if we are dashing, and the next question is if, just doing it a nested if statement so I can double check every step of the way. And the next one is current dash time is, remember we went less or equal to 0. That means we're out of time. What did I call it? Current dash time. There we go. Clearly I did not. Okay, so if we run out of time, the following needs to happen. So we are going to say, if we're out of time, we are going to set the current dash time equal to dash time. We're going to then set the RB dot velocity is equal to, and we need a new vector3, especially if we're using the rigid body, and we're going to say 0 comma RB dot velocity dot y, so we keep our gravity force happening, and then comma 0 for our z position. And then all that's left to do that we did was say that is dashing is equal to false because we are no longer dashing. So this is our reset system like we did in Bolt. So we're just resetting all the variables back to the way they were. Okay, we just need to do one more thing after this. Okay, so now what do we do if it is true? So we're going to go else. If we still have time, what do we want to do? We want to say current dash time is equal to current dash time minus time dot fixed delta time. After we do that, we want to actually move the object. So we're going to go rb dot velocity is equal to what? It is equal to our new vector3. Again, keeping in mind that we want to, I guess we could add gravity in, but we haven't really been doing that. So we're going to go and say, okay, new vector3, what do we want to do? Remember, we have this variable here, vector2 input normalized equals player input that. So the problem with this is it's currently inside of this if statement. So I want to use this across the entire fixed update. So I'm going to grab that entire line of code and move it outside of the if statement so that it is inside of the fixed update. Because I'm using it across all of these, I kind of need to have it outside of that. So I'm going to use this input normalized vector. We're going to put in here, we're going to go dot x, and we're going to multiply that by the dash force, not dash time. We're going to multiply that by time dot fixed delta time, and that's for the x. We're going to go 0, and then we can choose, do we want gravity to affect it when it's dashing or not? If we do, we can say rb.velocity.y. If not, we can go 0, and then we're going to go input normalize.y, again multiplied by dash force multiplied by time dot fixed delta time. So all we're doing is we're subtracting the current dash time from time dot fixed, taking the fixed time dot fixed delta time and then setting it back into the current dash time and then adding the character force. So that pretty much should do it. We just have one more thing. This line of code here, I'm just going to copy this current dash time is equal to dash time. And at the start of the game, we need to set it up. We don't have a start, so right at the top here, I'm just going to give myself some space. I'm going to type in start. So that at the start of the game, I'm just going to make sure we update those variables accurately so that we have a dash time to start with. Okay. Let's go back and suss this out. I think I made it right mouse button, so we shall see. Make sure that it updates, and when it pops up, we've now got 1000 dash force and 0.25 as our actual dash time. Okay, so notice how they're both using the same settings, but the one on the right, the one that's using code, is actually dashing, and it can dash multi-directional because we're using that input. So if we wanted to make the dash a little bit faster, we could go and, let's say, make it 2000 in distance, but shorten the dash time to like 0.15. So that way, the character is going to be traveling a lot faster for a shorter distance. There we go, like that. But my camera follow is too slow to keep up with the dashing, so I would have to adjust that. Okay, so there's definitely I'm not quite sure, there is a definite bug in Bolt, because we've done the exact same thing. Oh well, at least in this version of Unity with Bolt. So there we go. So okay, so let me see if I can find an animation really quickly just to kind of plug into this. I'm just going to go to Mixamo. Hopefully this doesn't crash anything. So I'm just going to open up here, and hopefully my internet's been really good. I'm just going to find something that kind of looks like a dashing pose or something, just to kind of show you how you would implement the dash animation. Thank you so much for watching these videos. I hope you guys are learning stuff, and hopefully it's making sense. I'm trying to, the point of these videos are not to just kind of speak to the more experienced developers. It's more speaking to the ones that are kind of struggling with the understanding of certain things. So I kind of simplify a lot of this stuff to make it a little bit more digestible, if that makes sense. Okay, so I've got the wrong character and I don't want to take the chance that it breaks, so I'm just going to quickly load the character we have. Sorry about this, it's taking a little bit, but yeah, while we're waiting for that, I can actually go to the animator and just open that up and just set up a default state that we can replace the animation with. So we have all of this here, and we're going to be moving around, and the question is whether or not you can dash in the air or whether you can dash on the ground. So you'd have to ask yourself, can you do that? And in this case, right now it's kind of set up just to dash whenever the hell it wants. So I'm going to create an empty state here. Let's call this one's going to be called dash, so I'm going to rename it here. So it's got no animation, so I'm gonna probably have to check to see if I'm grounded. So I'm gonna, and then I'll set this up. So I'm gonna go dashing, move that to there. And we should also probably check whether or not, if we dash off an edge, to whether or not we should go into our falling animation, but we'll leave it for now as this is, as the state here. So what do we need to do? We need to add a new variable here, which is a bool, and I'm going to say dashing, and I'm going to check to see if dashing is true here. So has exit time is going to be turned off. I'm going to add dashing and say, okay, if dashing is true, then we're going into this dash state. If it's not true, so if it's false, we're going to go back to the movement state. We currently have no animation here. My internet's really, really slow. So I'm just going to kind of see if I can grab a still frame from one of the other animations that we have. So let's see what we have and what we can work with. I think we can take a frame from the running animation, actually. If we just kind of look really closely, we can. It's a little bit weird. Maybe grab one of these here. Let's see. Like that. Maybe I'll use frame 21 as my dash frame. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit the plus, rename this to dashing, and I'm going to make sure that this is frame 21 to frame 21. Set it to loop. It's over one frame, so it's ridiculous, but it absolutely doesn't. It will do nothing. Set this to feet, and I'm just getting rid of any kind of root motion potential that could be there. Okay, so I'm going to select my panel here, and I'm going to select my dashing animation so that it actually has a dashing animation now. So it's going to be ridiculous, and it's not going to work the way it's supposed to, but at least it's going to do the job. So we need to call this in bolt and code. So let's do it in code because the code's already open. And we're going to do it here. So we're going to say if get mouse button down is pressed and dashing is true, we're going to go to here. We're going to type in animator reference dot set bool, and it's called dashing, and we're going to set that to be equal to is dashing. There we go. And then we're going to just select this line of code, copy it, and we're going to go down to where the dashing, when the dashing is false. Paste it down here so that we are setting the dashing to be false again. Okay, now let's see what happens, because the animation looked a little bit weird in the actual tree here, but it should do the trick. It should work. Okay, yeah, so you can see it's changing animations, but it's breaking due to the fact that I think I have potentially used the wrong character animation, but it is changing state. So if we look at the animator here, put it down here, you'll see we're in the movement state, and when I hit it, if I actually had the right character selected, oh wait, I'm looking at the wrong character, that's the bolt one. Notice how it does actually transition to that state. Let me just add, and that's pretty much it. I want to see why the animation is freaking out. I'm quite sure I'm using the right animation. That's character run. Yeah, no, that's fine. What is the problem? Okay, so I'm just going to go to my animator, drag it up here, and just probably just recreate this. I'm going to delete this, go to my run, grab my dashing, and let's just set these states up again. Select this, turn off has exit time, because that looks, turn on is dashing to be true. Oh, and again, it's all over the place, and it's going through the floor. That is very weird that that dashing is doing that, even though it looks perfectly fine. Again, let's check what's happening. Model, rig, bones. Okay. Just copying both settings to make sure that they're the same. That is uniquely weird. It might be the fact that I'm trying to only use one single frame of animation. So let's make this dashing maybe like 0 to 25. See what that looks like. Wow, okay, that might be too much. So let's go 22. Okay, so that seems to work. So it doesn't actually like a single frame. I'm not sure why that would be the case, but that seems to be the case as it is. So now the animation should play. Should be able to dash. Goes into that dash pose, which if I had a really decent dash animation, I could probably allow it. But it is working, so you can see I can dash. So the greater the dash value and the lower, the smaller the dash time, the quicker the dash you're gonna get. Whereas if you were to use, well, look, I'm not even gonna try the bolt one. If I were to set this down to like 500 and set this to like a second, it will dash for longer, but it will take longer to get there, if that makes sense. So let's do this. Notice how it's still dashing. So it kind of, depending on the kind of result you're trying to do. There we go. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So I'm going to set this back to about 1.5 and to about 0.2. See what that looks like, and then that's the end of this video for the dashing. We're going to cover a few different things in the next, there we go, in the next video, which is going to be like directional shooting, that sort of thing. Okay, there we go. There's a few things you are probably going to want to consider. Locking any kind of directional movement based on once you're in the dashing process. Uh, that sort of thing. That's probably what I would do. Okay, and that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. Hopefully this has helped, and again, hopefully you learn from my mistakes and do not move up to 2019.3.15 just yet if you are using Bolt, unless you have the newest version of Bolt. Cheers guys, be safe.